British Prime Minister Theresa May's official 3-day visit to China. After visiting the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, Theresa May met with Chinese President Xi Jinping on Thursday in Beijing. The two leaders discussed a variety of issues, including trade. On Wednesday, the Prime Minister unveiled an educational deal during her visit to the city of Wuhan in central China. The initiative includes the extension of a math teacher exchange program and a campaign to promote English language learning in China.
President Xi Jinping met with Mrs. May at the Yiwei State Guest House, calling on both countries to work for the healthy and steady development of bilateral ties in the new era. Her visit marks the first annual China-UK Prime Ministers meeting, following President Xi's state visit to the UK in 2015. It is also Mrs. May's first official visit to China since she took office, and the first by a British Prime Minister in 4 years. On Wednesday, Premier Li Keqiang met with the British leader at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. The two sides agreed to take their mutually beneficial cooperation to a new level across various sectors under the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. Premier Li and Mrs. May also witnessed the signing of agreements covering areas such as trade and investment, financial services, scientific innovation, environmental protection, education, and bioscience. According to the Ministry of Commerce, China and the UK's bilateral trade hit $79 billion in 2017. Britain had made direct investments of $1.5 billion in China, while China's non-financial investment in the UK hit a little more than $1.5 billion. The Prime Minister said she was seeking a major economic partner for post-Brexit Britain and looking to ring in the golden era between the UK and China.
In terms of the future for the relationship between the UK and China when we leave the European Union, we've today agreed this joint review of trade and investment review, which I think is a good step towards looking towards what our future trade relationship can be.
China and the UK are permanent members of the UN Security Council and members of the G20. Chinese officials said the cooperation between the two countries would be beneficial not only for the two countries, but also for world peace and development.
For more on warming relations between China and the UK, we are joined in our Beijing studio, Wang Yiwei, Jean Monnet Chair Professor from the Chinese University, Renmin University. Welcome, sir, to our program. Meanwhile, we would like to welcome as well Mike Bastin, a professor at the University of Southampton. Meanwhile, joining us in Cambridge, we have Professor David Cremer, the KPMG Chaired Professor at Cambridge University Judge Business School. He's also founder of the Cambridge One Belt One Road Center, which is now hosting the One Belt One Road UK-China Cooperation Conference here in China. Welcome to everyone. I want to start with you, Professor Cremer. A trade deal earlier was being mentioned. Is there any hope that one could be reached? Free trade deal between China and the UK?
Well, they definitely have the intentions to do so, but I think legally and technically speaking it will be impossible because the UK is still part of the EU. So Brexit negotiations will finish in 2019, and then it needs to be seen which trade agreement they will have to use, EU-related or world trade agreements, for example. So at this moment, legally and officially speaking, I don't think an agreement will be possible during this visit. But the intention is there because the potential is enormous.
Professor Wang, how much swaying power does the UK have now toward, let's just say, policy making inside the European Union and also for the future of the UK by this administration, the May administration?
During the transition period, when UK is still in the European Union, even after the Brexit, there's a transition that all the European laws still apply to the United Kingdom. So we still pay attention to the relations with the UK. At the same time, to go beyond the bilaterally and European affairs, UK is a permanent member of United Nations Security Council, so the Global Britain, the other Commonwealth, and so particularly for the Belt and Road Initiative, the multiple countries, they are also former colonies of the United Kingdom, and then United Kingdom still have many calls on the international standard and the rules. So I think still we have anything to do.
All right. Given the reality, Professor Bastin, how could the UK, who was very active when the AIIB was established, UK was one of the very first so-called Western countries to join, but given the limited capabilities UK is having right now, at least for the moment, what can UK do in order to get the best out of this visit? How much really can we expect?
I think we can expect a fair amount. There'll be obviously strong rhetoric, and stronger rhetoric, I think, is needed from the Prime Minister. But I think it's at the lower level where the business leaders, and I think she's taken about 60 of them with her, a very large number, can really start to make good relationships with Chinese partners. So it's really at the business level that we need to monitor this visit and future visits and future relationship building. And I see those growing quite significantly, even though, as the other panelists have said, there probably will be a transitionary period where the UK won't be free to form free trade deals. But I think the UK business sector, particularly the small and medium-sized sector, are increasingly keen on China because of Brexit. So I think we'll see progress very, very quickly.
Professor Wang, as you may know, Mr. Liu He, coming from the financial part of the Chinese Central Committee, has been talking about in the World Economic Forum in Davos, China's commitment for the next 3 years: environmental protection, poverty alleviation, together with reducing of risk of the financial sector, developing an economy, all through reform and opening up. So very concrete Chinese commitment to the world. How much can UK cash in and also get its opportunity as a result?
I think that's the reason Prime Minister has also claimed that the golden era is still there. I mean, China's structural reform, more openness, particularly for the financial and insurance market, and also education market, which allowed the foreign stakeholders maybe can have more than maybe 51%. This is huge. I think the Chinese market will be open more than expectations of the West. So UK, the economy very rely on the service and high level of the particularly for the financial. So I think the relations between UK and China economically very complementary. So that's the reason I think the golden era. But the problem is whether UK can catch of these opportunities because of the uncertainty of their Brexit.
Well,
and
that's
the
their
government
big
is
question
also
mark
strong.
politically for them, right? Professor De Cremer, do you think UK will be able to get the sunshine of this opportunity, be able to catch it?
To be able to cash, not immediately, I think, but like was said before, it's at the lower level. Definitely, the businesses will definitely profit from it, and you have to realize as well, a political visit like this is always a symbolic act. It's showing intention. It's showing the fact that the countries want to collaborate. When it comes down to pinpointing down the legal, the business consequences, those will always appear later. So businesses know they follow the political actions, but if the political actions don't give, like for example, when Theresa May comes back and she's under attack in the UK as well, and there will be a new leader, things will change. But what is important is that at the lower level, business relationships have been built, and businesses know their way as well. So they can also operate independent of the political leadership. But at this moment, this is all a symbolic action showing an intention towards the long term.
Right. Professor Wang, if I could go to you, I mean, it is very competitive, the Chinese market, and also the Chinese investment for overseas. How much do you think, from China's perspective, the UK has got in order to be competitive? We're going to see a string of European leadership coming to visit China at the very beginning of the year. So how much has the charm of the UK, do you think, will be able to help it in a way to explore all of these opportunities, all in which are competitive?
Firstly, I think the UK is very pragmatic. I think the business is the focus on the Chinese economic structure, changing from export to import, and also from attract FDI from abroad to invest abroad. I think UK attract more investment than Germany, Italy, France combined together in Europe. So UK's financial market is quite open to China. But the problem is we expect in the former time that UK will promote the bilateral investment treaty between China and the European Union. But so far, this is uncertainty for the UK, particularly for the London. We cannot expect that much that London can play a very important role of RMB internationalization, but Shanghai Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange,
right,
and the local government, regional corporations are still huge potential.
Well, having said that, though, Mr. Cremer, if I could go to you for a specific case study, something called the Hinkley Point C project, that was approved back the year 2016, and things were going quite well, but then there was so-called the security concerns. It has to be put up. It's one of those Chinese investment projects inside the UK. So people are wondering, besides, you know, the wonderful shake of hands between the two leaders, is the UK really going to extend its olive branch to Chinese investment for real, or this is all political gestures?
No, it will be for real, because because of the situation that we live in today. You have to recognize, first of all, the fact that with the nuclear plant, this was in the time that David Cameron was still MP, and when Theresa May came to power, she put it on hold, or stopped it actually. So that's already a political change. That's one thing. The second thing is, you have to realize that the UK is trying to get the best deals now after Brexit. That's one thing. But they don't have that much bargaining power, and also towards China, their bargaining power initially will be pretty limited because they will need new trade partners. So in that sense, I'm very confident that yes, they mean serious business with China. The shape it will take and what the limitations are and the challenges, they still need to be determined because of who will be the next new leader, because many fear and think Theresa May will not be it, and what will be the deal after Brexit.
That's right. Professor Bastin, those are all so-called the risks for business people. So uncertainties is the thing that the business least want. So with all of those in mind, how attractive is the UK for real for now, Professor Bastin?
I think it's very attractive. I mean, there are risks, as the panelists have said, and there is uncertainty with the post-Brexit world. And Theresa May's own position is coming under even more serious threat, particularly with the recent announcements by Michel Barnier about their idea of a transitionary period. The Brexiteers will put more pressure on her. But I think the business community largely operate independent of government more and more in the UK, and they see this as a very, very attractive opportunity. And I think on the Chinese side, they do as well. So I think the two business communities will come together very, very quickly, quite surprisingly, regardless of the political administration and political policy.
When you talk about
I think what we need to focus on is certain industries. Yeah, the creative industries, I think, is what we really need to highlight, and fashion in particular.
Well, fashion industry would be wonderful, but the proportion of fashion industry in the overall economic development is I would say quite limited. So here's the bigger question, Professor Cremer, if you could help me. Belt and Road is something you are concentrating on. We have, in the previous administration, agreements between China and the UK on developing the northern part of the UK and also extending the Belt and Road to the part of Europe. Now we have postponed it. The thing is, will it ever have a chance to be revitalized, whether it's about northern part or southern part or other parts of the UK, or the UK being a partner inside the European continent, be able to work with China on the Belt and Road initiative together with other partners? That is the question. Is there any thought about that at all? Any plan at all?
Well, I do hope that they will work together, and given the economic reality, they will have to. The One Belt, One Road, it started off as a very much focused economic initiative, but you have to realize that OBOR, like they call it, is much more than only economy. It's an exchange of culture, so the creative sector, the philosophies, or cultural products, the exchange there is also very important. It's also an idea and spirit. So what we see is that on the long term, the One Belt, One Road initiative to succeed, we'll have to have shared ownership. So that it's not only perceived as a Chinese initiative only, but that it will be based on the collaboration between different countries. And from that point of view, I think both the economic as political reality on the longer term will make sure that EU, UK, China, they'll collaborate. I'm pretty sure of that.
Professor Wang?
We expect that Prime Minister Theresa May, today's visit, can sign at the government level the joint Build the Belt Road Initiative deal. But unfortunately, her power is so weak that she cannot repeat that the leading role that the UK has taken in the AIIB joint because of the US pressure. US, I think, the relationship with the UK is still quite so special. The UK is military, industry, not so independent from the United States. So with the excuse of so-called international rules-based, and then make some obstacles between China and the UK corporations of the Belt and Road Initiative.
While we are speaking, gentlemen, we are already seeing quite a number of visits coming from the European leaders to China. At the very beginning of the new year, more and more European leaders are eager to learn more about China. French President Emmanuel Macron, for example, became the first foreign head of state to visit China in 2018, followed by British Prime Minister Theresa May right now, from Wednesday to Friday, with Dutch King Willem Alexander arriving on February the 7th, one after another. What exactly is the nature, Professor Wang, if I could knock on your door once again, of relationship, particular trade relationship between China and the European Union, and also China and the sporadic countries in the European Union?
I think the China-European Union cooperation now go beyond the bilateral trade areas, which promote, I think, the openness, inclusiveness, and sustainable development of the globalization and the multilateralism, global governance, particularly so-called American First and President Trump more focus on the U.S. interests. So China-European cooperation is very crucial for the world.
Professor de Cremer?
Yes. I agree. One of the things that happened, of course, is that the U.S. has withdrawn a little bit. America first, although they still want to collaborate, but this has brought in a certain dynamic within the EU where you see that despite hesitations in the past, the EU is now full force looking towards the east and is definitely interested in having more trade agreements also with China and larger size of Asia. And of course, the Brexit dynamics just reinforced that. So yes, you can expect more and more statespeople from EU countries visiting China. And I think ultimately the big winner at the moment is China.
Is it, Professor Bastin?
I think most definitely that the influx of foreign investment, foreign business, expedites the internationalization process of Chinese companies, Chinese consumers, and that will push modernization further. So China is benefiting most definitely, and economically it's seen as so attractive. It's related to Trump's policies, but the IMF have just upgraded GDP for this year to 6.6%, 6.4%. That's very healthy compared with the world average of 3.9%. So Chinese consumers are benefiting massively from this. So there's a win-win situation going on here.
Professor Wang, though, how would China see this promising yet uncertain picture? Because we do understand there is a very strong ally relationship between many of the European countries and the United States. And China and the United States want to work as partnership on certain issues, even though President Trump claimed China as the rival during his State of the Union address yesterday. Professor Wang, how does China calmly look at the picture and the nature of things?
I think this is 21st century. We should have their future-oriented mentality, not Cold War mentality. For example, recently the Nikon, the companies fell many troubles. It's not because of their others, a competitor from Samsung or from Sony. It's because of their smart cell phone. So the U.S. felt pressure, not from China actually, it's from the new type of globalization. I think the United States should understand that they should work together with China and Europe partner to push forward globalization and global governance, or not vice versa.
Professor de Cremer, now we are speaking, but many of the European capitals are also very busy talking to one another. Whether it's Brexit issue, whether it's about the future of the European Union, are still uncertain pictures. Could you help us to understand, with your understanding of the politics, where is Europe going, if I could mention it as a whole? And during this process, even with Brexit, how is the UK likely to map out its best interest in this process?
Well, it's a very good question, but also a very complex one, as you can imagine. I think my own personal view has always been, when the referendum showed that people want to leave and Brexit would become a reality, that there are no winners, that this is a loss-loss for both sides. At this moment, it just seems to be to evaluate who's going to have the most losses, and it seems to be the UK at this moment, but we never know. So there's uncertainty on both sides, if you could say, both UK and EU. The EU, one of their biggest concerns is, of course, that if they allow the UK to exit in a relatively easy way, the fear will be there that other countries within the EU may take similar steps. And they don't want that, because that's the loss of the Union, and that's the loss of their capital, their economy. So that's a big concern. So at this point, that's why I said that the UK has very little bargaining room towards the EU. And if they get a hard Brexit, they will have very little bargaining room towards the rest of the world as well, initially. So that's one big uncertainty for them. For the EU, where are they heading to? Well, they have a very strong currency now. The market is pushing them into that direction. No matter what Draghi says, actually, of the European Central Bank, the currency stays high. Although they implemented many measures to increase inflation, which was almost zero up to 2 years ago. So for them, they're still regulating their own internal economy. Having said that, I do see that there are very positive signs between the EU and China relationships. Like I mentioned earlier, in the past, EU was very hesitant to engage in these relationships, but right now they are very much looking for new opportunities.
Right.
The biggest threat for the EU, however, is that if you look at the innovation that is happening in terms of technology, in terms of stepping outside of their boundaries, what they're known politically, social system-wise, they have a problem there. So one of the positives that the UK could have is, because they break out of this status quo kind of thinking that some economists refer to, UK has the opportunity, the liberty now actually to engage with the rest of the world again, try out new systems, experiment, which brings innovation. The EU and innovation, that's another story right now. And I think the EU is starting to realize that, hence also the reinforced relationships with China, because China will dominate basically technology, IT development for so many years to come. Also, that's why China talks about the digital One Belt, One Road. That's going to be a major challenge, and if EU is not careful, they may miss the train there.
Professor Wang, a lot of wonderful analysis, it seems, from Professor Cremer about China from the EU and the European perspective. But Professor Wang, for China, it is about managing the uncertainties. It's about knowing that things could change at any time when the European Union changes, when the UK changes, or their relationship with the others changes. So here's the thing, Professor Wang, if you could help us 30 seconds to help us understand, how would China manage that uncertainty? Do we have a strategy?
Well, focus on the new era, like the gentleman mentioned about digital economy, AI, 5G, and also focus on the regional government corporations. I think that may be hedging the Brexit uncertainty.
All right. Time is running up for this discussion, and certainly running up for some of the other crises going on in the world. We hope there will be solutions, and good solutions for all. Thank you so much, the three of you gentlemen, for being with us. Wang Yiwei, David Cremer, Mike Bastin. Really appreciate gentlemen for being with us. Thank you.